before you were born, before your family learned to write it, before ink ever touched paper, your name already existed, not as sound, not as spelling, but as a memory moving through time. Tonight we step into that memory, not to categorize people, but to listen to what their names still whisper beneath the noise of the modern world. Because surnames were never meant to be decorations. They were maps, and under moonlight, maps begin to speak. There was a time when a name could tell you where someone came from, who protected them, what land fed them, and what story shaped their blood. Names were not chosen. They were inherited like soil under the nails. Ireland, Scotland, Wales, England, 4 lands, 4 ways of remembering who you are. Tonight we walk gently through each one, not to separate, but to understand. Chapter 1. Ireland. Blood remembers first. In Ireland, surnames were not invented for convenience. They were not created to organize records, to count citizens, or to satisfy kingdoms. They were born early, earlier than almost anywhere else in Europe, emerging from a world where identity was not chosen but inherited, not claimed but carried. Long before ink touched parchment, before borders hardened into lines, before crowns rose and fell, names lived in the mouth, in the breath, in the memory of the people. They did not begin with occupation. They did not describe what a man did with his hands or how he earned his bread. They did not measure worth through productivity or social rank. They began with ancestry, with blood, with belonging. In Ireland, a name was not something you took on. It was something that stood behind you, unseen yet unmovable. The prefixes O and Mac were not decorative flourishes. They were anchors dropped into time. They tethered the present to the deep past. O meant descendant of, not metaphorically, but literally. A declaration that your life flowed from a life before it. That your breath was an echo of someone who had walked the same hills, drunk from the same streams, and been buried beneath the same soil. Mac meant son of not ownership, but continuation. A living thread stitched through generations. A promise that lineage would not dissolve into anonymity. To say O'Neill was to speak the name of Niall as if he still stood nearby. To say McCarthy was to acknowledge Carthack not as history, but as presence. The dead were never fully gone. They lingered in syllables. They survived in sound. A name in Ireland was not a label. It was a declaration of origin, not ambition. It did not say where you were going. It said where you came from and whom you carried with you. These names endured things that would have erased lesser identities. They survived invasion after invasion, Norse, Norman, English. They endured the quiet violence of paperwork, the slow suffocation of anglicization, the deliberate trimming of vowels and the flattening of meaning. Even when prefixes were stripped away by law or necessity, even when records were rewritten by foreign hands, even when survival demanded adaptation, the rhythm remained. Something ancient pulsed beneath the altered spellings. A memory hummed beneath the surface, refusing to go silent. Irish surnames move like rivers. They curve, they soften. They carry weight without force. They do not rush toward conclusion. They wander, patient and enduring, shaped by time rather than urgency. They hold grief without breaking. They carry pride without shouting. They remember when the world forgets. In Ireland, a name is not what you do. It is not a resume. It is not an aspiration. It is a lineage breathing through you. A story spoken before you ever learned to speak. A quiet reminder that you are never standing alone. Because in Ireland, blood remembers first, and it never truly forgets. Chapter 2. Scotland. Belonging to the land. Scotland does not speak softly. It speaks through stone, through wind, through the long memory of hills that have watched centuries pass without blinking. Its language is written into the terrain itself. into the rise and fall of the Highlands, the narrow glens carved by time, the lochs that hold silence like a vow. Scottish surnames were not born in abstraction. They were shaped by the land that demanded endurance. Here, identity did not float freely. It was anchored, heavy, deliberate, unmovable. Like Ireland, the prefix Mac appears at meaning son of. But in Scotland, it carries a deeper gravity. It does more than point to lineage. It binds a person to a collective will. To bear a Scottish surname was not merely to belong to a family. It was to belong to a people, a territory, a cause. A clan was not a romantic notion. It was survival made social. It was protection against hunger, invasion, and extinction. It was law before law existed. It was loyalty enforced not by paper, but by blood and oath. To say MacDonald, MacLeod, Mackenzie was to declare allegiance, not individuality. It was to say, I stand with them. I rise and fall with my own. Your name told others who would defend you, and who you would die beside. Scottish surnames carry the weight of collective movement. Entire families migrating together, fighting together, enduring loss together. When one fell, all remembered. Some names were born directly from the land itself, from dark rivers that cut through stone, from crooked mouths of valleys where the wind never rests, from high ridges where clouds cling low and the air feels ancient. Others echo the great clans, names that once marched across hillsides like storms, their banners visible miles away, their presence reshaping the fate of entire regions. These are names that do not drift. They are not light. They do not bend easily. Scottish surnames feel grounded because they are grounded. They are pressed into earth and peat and rock. They are heavy with memory, not sentimental but resolute. Where Irish names flow like rivers, Scottish names stand like mountains. They resist erosion. They bear scars. They endure weather, war, and time itself. They do not float through history. They brace against it. And in doing so, they remind the world of an ancient truth. In Scotland, identity was never about standing out. It was about standing firm. Together. Chapter 3. Wales. Names that sing. Wales tells its story differently. Not in stone or steel, not through conquest or command, but through sound, through breath, through the soft persistence of voice passed from one generation to the next. Here, names were never meant to stand still. They moved, they shifted, they lived. In early Wales, a surname was not a fixed inheritance. It was a living sentence, rewritten with each generation. A man was known not by a family label, but by his relationship to the one who came before him. He was the son of his father, and his son would become someone new again. Ap Rhys, Ap Hugh, Ap Owen. Each name was a moment in motion, a brief pause in a longer song. There was no desire to freeze identity in place, no need to preserve a single banner across centuries. What mattered was continuity, not permanence. Connection, not control. Over time, the language softened its edges. Sound shaped spelling, breath shaped form. Ap Rhys melted into Price. Ap Hugh softened into Pew. Ap Owen rounded into Bowen. Not through force, but through repetition. Through voices calling across valleys. Through mothers calling children home at dusk. Through names spoken so often they became smooth. Welsh surnames carry melody in their bones. They are shaped by a language meant to be heard, not confined to ink. A language that rises and falls like hills under mist, that bends toward music, poetry, and prayer. These names do not march, they sing. They do not demand attention, they invite listening. Where other traditions emphasize possession, of land, of people, of blood, Welsh naming reflects relationship. A recognition that identity exists in motion, that a person is always of someone, always in connection. There is gentleness here, flexibility, a refusal to harden into permanence. Welsh surnames remember connection rather than control. They carry lineage without chains. They honor the past without imprisoning the future. They remind us that identity does not always need to be fixed to endure. Sometimes it survives by adapting, by flowing, by singing itself forward through time. And in that song, Wales endures, not as a monument, but as a living voice that refuses to fall silent. Chapter 4. England, Order and Function. England tells a different story again. Not one of song or blood or land-bound memory, but of structure, of systems forming in real time, of a society learning how to organize itself, and choosing order as its language. Here, surnames did not grow slowly from myth or melody. They were built, assigned, recorded. They emerged from function, from work done with the hands, from places mapped and owned, from lines drawn in ink and law, smith, baker, tailor, names born from craft, from repetition, from daily labor that sustained towns and fed kingdoms. What you did became who you were, not symbolically, but administratively. To be a smith was to be known by your usefulness. To be a baker was to be essential, reliable, counted upon. Identity became practical before it became poetic. Then came the land, hill, wood, brook, names that pointed outward rather than inward, markers on a map, coordinates of belonging. You were not defined by ancestry or clan, but by where you stood, by the soil beneath your feet and the boundaries around it. And then came lineage, but measured and contained. Johnson, Harrison, Richardson. Not poetic invocations of ancestry, but tidy identifiers. Clear, traceable, efficient. You were the son of John. Nothing more needed saying. These names emerged alongside record-keeping, taxation, and census. As kings sought order, as parishes counted souls, as governance required clarity. England's surnames were tools of administration. They allowed people to be located, taxed, summoned, documented. They made society legible. Where other cultures sang their names or carried them like inheritance, England wrote them down. Neat, indexed, repeatable. English surnames are practical by design. They value function over feeling, consistency over continuity. They are built for stability, not myth. They reflect a culture learning to manage itself, to measure time, land, labor, and loyalty, to turn people into records and records into order. They do not romanticize the past. They organize it. They do not ask who you descend from. They ask what you do, where you are, and how you fit. And in that quiet efficiency, a different kind of legacy forms. Not one sung by bards or carried in blood, but one archived, indexed, and preserved. A society that remembers by recording. A people who turned identity into infrastructure. Chapter 5. What names still carry? Irish names remember blood. They carry lineage like a pulse beneath the skin. They whisper of ancestors who lived before memory learned to write itself down. They speak of kinship not as concept, but as inheritance. Something felt before it is understood. Scottish names remember belonging. They echo the bond between people and place, between clan and land, between survival and unity. They carry the weight of standing together when standing alone meant vanishing. Welsh names remember voice. They remember sound before structure, relationship before record. They sing of connection, fluid, human, and alive. They remind us that identity can breathe, bend, and still endure. English names remember function. They recall a world learning to organize itself, to measure labor, map territory, and make society legible. They carry the discipline of order, the quiet efficiency of systems that endure by design. None of these traditions are greater than the others. None are empty, none are accidental. Each emerged from necessity. Each was shaped by the pressures of its time. Each reveals what mattered most when identity first took form. Blood, belonging, voice, function. These are not opposites, they are layers. Together they form a map of how human beings have tried to answer the same question across centuries. who am I in relation to others? And today, when you hear a surname spoken, quickly, casually, almost without thought, you are hearing more than a label. You are hearing centuries compressed into a single sound, generations folded into a syllable. Lives lived, lost, endured, and remembered. You are hearing survival disguised as language, memory disguised as habit, history softened into everyday speech. A name may seem small, but it is never empty. It is a quiet archive, a carried story, a trace of how humans once understood themselves, and how, in subtle ways, they still do. Under moonlight, names stop being labels. They become echoes of land, of people, of choices made long before memory learned to write. So the next time you hear a name, pause. Listen for what it remembers. Because even now, names are still speaking. If this story stirred something quiet inside you, leave a comment with the origin of your surname, or simply the land you feel most connected to. If you walk this kind of history with me, subscribe for more moonlit stories where culture, memory, and identity meet. And if you wish, share this with someone whose name carries a story waiting to be heard. Until next time, walk gently through your lineage.